Hello, this is the fifth Fetter, and it's the seventh lesson about shaming, about the mirror of shaming, and it is a continuation of the fifth lesson that was about the verbal indicators. But today we're going to talk about shaming, the mirror of shaming, and we assume that when you listen to this lesson here, that you know about the bubble of reality. You know that whenever you start to shame other people, that you know it's only about you. We're at the point now where we are starting to completely dissolve the idea and the underlying belief about fear, anger, guilt, and shame. So we are dissolving that. We are about to end the lower five and moving into the higher fives, which means that we can't have any of these hooks with us when we move into the higher fives. So in order to watch this lesson, I can recommend you to watch the lesson about the verbal indicators. It's the fifth lesson in the fifth Fetter, where we talk about the verbal indicators. We have already talked about blaming. This one is about shaming. If you have worked with shaming, when we talked about the emotional indicators, then you know that shaming is in many ways very cruel, because where guilt goes on an action, shaming goes on the person. And when we are shaming ourselves and we have experienced to be shamed, for example, why aren't you more like your brother or your sister? Why aren't you more like a friend of yours? That it's going on the person, that the complaint that was directed towards you went on your personality. And we have so much shaming in society. We have body shaming, we have fat shaming, we have racism, which is a kind of melanin shaming. We have shaming about your financial status, about your age. We have shaming about so many different things. And the reason why I think, is so prevalent in society is that it really speaks to something. When we think that we have low self-esteem, low self-worth, self-hate, lack of self-care, unclear boundaries, or poor sense of self, all that, it comes from an underlying belief about shame. And shaming is so prevalent in our society. The problem with it is that it's impossible to do anything about. When you are shamed on something about your person, it's usually things that you can't do anything about. You're shamed about your gender, nothing to do about that. Shamed about your color, nothing to do about that. Shame about your size, nothing to do about that. We need to start to realize that the majority of the body shaming that is happening in society is based on something that cannot be changed. It's not about calories. It's not. It's really not. So blaming and shaming are very, very similar in many ways. But the biggest difference is that shaming goes on the person. An action can be changed, but the person can't. And shaming is really paralyzing that inner sense of an I. And as we talked about in the second Fetter, that we need to establish a proper sense of self, where we have the sense of self, we have self-care, we have boundaries, we have self-love, and we have self-worth. Those 5 factors need to be established before we can work with non-duality at all. If we're trying to look into shaming without looking at the I that was destroyed when we were children, that had, different thing happened where that was put into question, that we had any value at all. We need to recover from that, because the body remembers. It's still in the body. The experience is still locked in the body, and that is why we're diverting. And that is where the verbal indicators, they come in. That when we shame other people or when we shame ourselves, it's only meant as a diversion. There's something so icky happening in my body right now that I do not want to stay with. I do not want to be with this. And that is why we're shaming other people or we're shaming ourselves as a diversion. So we don't have to feel that icky sensation in the body. And that's all. So what you need to do is using the inquiry that you're going to hear in a moment, where you just you look into the shaming, where it really, really comes from. It really pick it apart. So you really just stay with that feeling, the icky feeling in the body, and remove the label, because shaming is nothing but an icky sensation in the body and a label add to it that say, this is shaming, this is going on my personality, I need to divert from this because this is not comfortable. And you remove the label and you just stay with that sensation in the body and see where that takes you. And it's about meeting, no matter what comes up, with love and compassion and kindness. Now, shaming can only happen when you believe in it. So it looks kind of like this, that shaming is about how an ego is judging another person. And that happens when that ego has high expectations to oneself that they do not meet themselves. They are projecting that onto another person, shaming the other person about not living up to their demands, and you believe it to be true. It's like the Buddha talked about that if you don't receive the gift, it's not your gift. If you don't receive it, it's got nowhere to go. That person with the high ideals and the big ego, they can stay over there with their high ideals and big ego. They can feel as shameful as they want to. No matter how much they throw it at you, if you do not receive the gift, it's not yours. So in order for you to be kind of like inoculated against shame and shaming from other people, it's deeply, profoundly knowing in you that it's just a feeling arising. It's not your feeling. There's no you to identify with that feeling of shame. So you let the feeling arise in your body and you stay with that sensation in the body. You detach the label called shaming and just stay with the feeling in your body and see where it takes you. And it will dissolve. It will change. Nothing stays the same ever. It's impossible. So that will change, and you just keep following that and see where it takes you. What insights is this giving you? And that's what we're doing with the inquiry in a moment. So shaming is very much about feeling inadequate. So you shame other people. You comment on other people's person when you feel inadequate as a person. And by diverting that icky feeling of inadequacy, you point the headlight to them, talk about them, so they can feel inadequate, and that makes you feel a little bit better. But obviously it doesn't, And this is also where it's important to look into, back to the toxic starting point. Is this meant with aggression? Are you the aggressive bully? Or is it done with passive aggressiveness? So it's the passive aggressive bully. Is it done with intimidation or with manipulation? Are you trying to intimidate somebody so you feel safer? Or you're trying to manipulate someone so you don't have to ask for what your needs to be met with. You don't have to ask for that. You are you're manipulating them into meeting your needs so you don't have to ask for it. And a very important thing that I really would like to say before we do the inquiry, it is that shaming is based on that, puffed up ego that are creating demands about how a person should be, which they don't live up to themselves. It's so hypocritical. None of the shamers out there are living up to their own ideals. They're demanding that from other people, but they're not living up to it themselves. It's completely impossible to live up to the demands. But what is happening is that we try to live up to those demands that they do not live up to themselves. And in that, we are trying to become superhumans. We are trying to become something that is absolutely impossible. We are all jerks and liars and wrong and odd and inadequate and demanding and ugly and silly. And since all of us are like that, since all of us are like that, that's normal. It can't be shameful when it's absolutely normal. We all make mistakes in traffic. We all, try to avoid different things because we don't want to feel like a certain thing. It's completely normal. You can enter that room in you and be with it because it's absolutely, utterly normal. So I would like for you to make yourself comfortable. You're going to do an inquiry now where we're looking into shaming, and I will be back with you shortly. Enjoy.
In just a few moments, see if you can settle into your seat. Take a few deep breaths and close your eyes. All of us have felt shamed at some point in our lives for one reason or another, but few people enjoy it. And yet we often find ourselves shaming others in a way that we would never want done to us. Why is this? I'd like you to bring to mind a time that you have said something in an attempt to shame someone else. It might have been a comment about their appearance, their job, their mannerisms, or something that they did that wasn't up to your standards. Do you have a time like that in mind? Now, I want you to turn those words back upon yourself. If you were criticizing someone's appearance, then what is it about your own appearance that you find unacceptable? It may or may not be a literal reflection. For instance, if you shame someone for being overweight, it might be that you feel that you too are heavier than you would prefer. But it might also reflect your fear of becoming overweight. It can also be a reflection of your judgments about someone who can become overweight. Do you feel that they lack self-control? So in what ways do you feel like your self-control is not up to par? Is it that they enjoy food or life in a way that you do not allow yourself to enjoy it? Do you criticize a person for not caring about their appearance because no matter how much you seem to value your own appearance, you are never able to see yourself as fully living up to the standards that you have set for yourself? Well, who has created those standards? Did you intentionally sit down one day and decide which BMI or skin color or hairstyle or way of eating food or dressing or voting or anything else was going to be deemed acceptable and which were going to be deemed beyond the pale? Was this a conscious choice? For the most part, probably not. And what is the value for you in maintaining these standards? Are you trying to live up to something so that you will get a reward? Is that reward the love and valuation of others? Did you learn earlier in life that if you don't look or behave in the right way, that your parents wouldn't give you the love you were craving? Or that if you didn't dress like your friends, they would ridicule you or shun you from the group? Do you feel like your acceptance and ability to access love and care from others is dependent on you being a certain way? And does your ability to access love and care from yourself depend on you living up to your own arbitrary standards? Bring to mind a time when someone has shamed you, when they criticized you and it really stung. Why did it hurt so much? Was it because you actually believed it to be true? We often deny it and say why the comment was so off base and that I know it wasn't about me, so it's fine. But if you remember it and if it stung, then it hit a wound. If someone on the street tells you that you look like a purple leprechaun, you would probably laugh and find it an absurd statement. However, if you had a belief that you are too short, or if you are insecure about your complexion, then you might take offense and feel that pang of shame for being who you are. But it's a nonsense comment. We can twist anything to hear what we need to hear. And in this case, it's pointing back to our deeply held insecurities. If someone tells you that they find bald people to be ugly, and you have a full head of hair, the comment will just roll off your back. Unless you are in some sort of relationship with a bald person, and then defensiveness might arise. But notice even in that defensiveness, if it is purely for the sake of your bald loved one, or if there's a hint of self-criticism that the other person might be judging you for being in a relationship with an ugly bald person, or that they're the best you can do, or that there's something wrong with your judgment that you actually find bald people attractive. We can turn just about anything into a self-indictment. Recognize any time that you're feeling the urge to shame others that you are pointing out your own insecurities. You are letting everyone know how it is that you view yourself. And you are telling yourself what you feel like you need to do in order to be loved. You are telling others that they are not worthy of love because of the way that they are, but that is only you reminding yourself that you think that you are not worthy of love the way that you are. Is this actually true? Why do you believe that love is contingent upon you living up to an unreachably high standard? Do you feel like if only you lost 5 more pounds, or earned 10,000 more a year, or stopped biting your nails, that finally people would accept you and give you the validation you need? Now, can you remember having set and met similar arbitrary goals for yourself in the past? And did you notice that when you lost the 5 pounds or quit smoking, that you still felt like there was something more that needed to be fixed before you'd really be good enough? Have you ever changed yourself in a way that was finally it? So can you see that you have created for yourself an unwinnable game where you can simply never be good enough to be happy? Where you can never be good enough to deserve the love of others? And even worse, that you can never be good enough to deserve your own love? How sad is it that we experienced other people withholding love and companionship from us, and instead of realizing that they were only acting out of their own reflective little bubbles, that we would then withhold love from ourselves until we could hit some unreachable plateau or perfection? Why are you doing that to yourself? What will happen if you lean back, give up the forcefulness, the urge to control, and just allow yourself to be as you are? Can you feel into the resistance that comes up to that idea? Make note of any excuses and arguments that arise so you can investigate them later. Once again, bring to mind a situation where you were made to feel shameful for being you. What do you feel in the body? Is it uncomfortable? Do you feel like you can stay here all day? Are you comfortable living from this collection of bodily contractions and other sensations? Do you recognize that you have been creating situations where you make yourself feel this every day unnecessarily? Every time you step on the scale? Every time you check your bank account? Every time you look in the mirror? Every time you compare yourself to others in any way, shape, or form? Continue feeling these uncomfortable sensations, and while you stay with them, see if any memories, thoughts, images, or phrases pop to mind, and take note of whatever arises without judgment or criticism. What is this thought pointing you to? Is it a time in your life that needs your love and compassion? Is it a judgment about yourself now that needs to be heard and healed? Whatever is there, feel the discomfort of sitting with the shame sensations and placing your hands on the part of the body where the sensations seem the strongest. Send as much love to that spot as possible. If you have a specific memory about a time when you were shamed, send that love back to the younger you. Bring the full wisdom of your current state to be there as a wise, supportive, loving guardian. You are now the person who you needed the most back then. Sit now, continuing to give love to these parts for as long as you would like. And feel free to listen to this inquiry over and over again, as needed, to remind yourself what to look out for. And then, when you're ready, Open your eyes and go about your life, bringing these new insights into your interactions with others and with yourself.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed it. So, with the knowledge you have now about shaming, I just want to say you can listen back to the inquiry as many times as you need to. With the knowledge you have about shaming, do you see that when we were talking about in the second fetter, we were talking about the toxic starting point with the aggressive bully, with the passive aggressive bully, or with the chameleon? Do you see now that those are only concepts? There is no such thing as fear, anger, guilt, and shame. There is no such thing as blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining. It's an underlying belief, There has to be something happening. So there's an underlying belief. As long as you can stay with that sensation that is happening in the body, allowing it to be there, removing the label and just staying with that sensation in the body, there's no need to intimidate. There's no need to manipulate. You can just stay with what is and know that everything is exactly like it's supposed to be. So, just to sum up, if you look at the mirror of shaming and you look at where shaming is pointing and ask yourself, can I be in a body where shaming is happening? And then ask yourself, why does this primary sensation of shaming arise at all? What is it that needs my attention? And then create sentences where, how is this about me? But you fill out the full sentences about how is this shaming about me? Full sentences, but you cannot mention anyone. It's only yourself you can mention. So you keep writing sentences that is pointing at where you shame you, how you feel shameful about your person, how you feel inadequate in your person. The second thing we would like for you to do is looking between if there's any connection between the primary sensation of shame and the need to react. So look into the diversion of shaming. Look into where that is pointing in your mirror. What is that actually pointing at? What is it regarding that feeling of shaming that needs your love, compassion, and kindness? And the last thing is, does shaming even exist? Does aversion even exist? Of course it doesn't. It's just a feeling. It's a feeling arising, just like smelling is arising and hearing is arising. A feeling is arising. And a feeling is a sensation in the body added a thought. If you remove the thought, remove the label, there's just a sensation in the body. Can you stay with that? And then I would like to quote Todd here at the end, where he always says, no story, no reactivity, no problem, and no suffering around it. Love that. Thank you.